Mental health with an India lens. Real stories, real conversation, real talk.
23rd of January, though, I sat in my Bombay flat reading 7 books.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Health Collective Talks. I'm Amrita Tripathi and delighted to be in conversation today with Anindita Chatterjee, who has a lot to do with our super professional sounding jingle and promo. Thanks, Anindita, for joining us today.
Thanks, Amrita. Thanks for having me. You guys are doing such a fantastic work with Health Collective that I think a whole session should be dedicated in just talking about how many small, little organizations are coming up, or at least outfits are coming up and trying to do so much of advocacy. I think that's really marvelous. And I know most of you have day jobs to do. So it must take incredible passion to do what you do.
Yes, thank you. I love speaking to you because I get so much validation. We have had a few conversations over the years. Anindita is the senior content director at Mirchi and a mental health advocate herself. So I'm really glad that we're having this chat. But it's been quite a journey, Anindita. I do want to ask you first off, how have you been? Because everyone's coming off quite the emotional roller coaster ride, full of stress, anxiety. COVID-19 has not been easy on anyone. How have you been?
I think, Amrita, now I go with the word coping. I love the word coping. So I get up every morning and I do a stock check. My family and friends are safe and healthy. I have a job that pays my bills and I have a life purpose. And that's pretty much it. My baseline has come down to, are these intact? And I, of course, speak from the place of privilege. So yeah, I'm coping and I think I'm coping well. And that's all it is. And I'm glad. I'm very, very thankful.
I think that we've had a lot of, conversations this year online. And, by this year, I mean 2020. I don't want to date this conversation, but early 2021 looks like it's going to be pretty much the same. You've called out the privilege we have where, for example, we still have jobs, as you mentioned, where many of us are working from home. We're still working, but that kind of melds into living at work. That's the new label it's been given. And I know that there's been high stress all around, So I do want to ask you, as someone who also leads teams and manages people, how are you able to balance out what needs to be done work-wise with just empathy and understanding what people are going through?
Amrita, I have to admit it's not been easy. For example, teams across the world are stretched and stressed, right? And there are job losses, pay cuts, furloughs, and it's literally terrible time for everyone. So to be honest, again, I mean, the fact that we have jobs and in fact, even the people who have lost their jobs, a lot of them have managed something. Some of them have been able to open their own outfits. Some have been absorbed in other organizations. So, but all of that has led to a lot of stress. So this year, and I keep saying this in all platforms that I go, you cannot not prioritize mental health after this. Like till about 2019, you might say, okay, it doesn't affect me or my family and get away with it. This year, there's nothing of that sort. All of us have been affected in some ways. And, even pay cuts, some people have not been able to pay for their children's education. And that, as a parent, I can tell you, creates a lot of stress. I have an 8-year-old who's really struggled to do online classes and keep his, sanity together. The truth is, he wakes up every morning and he wants to go to school. And he is missing his friends. And it's the fate of all children across the world. So it's not special for him. But the truth is that I think we are not talking about them as much. These are kids who will grow up with the memories of this year. And we don't even know, Amrita, how long this is, how it is. For example, you were talking about work. I really want to talk about the concept of death of an office. We are not talking about it. The truth is, I miss my colleagues. I miss the water cooler conversations and having to go into a boardroom and churn out ideas and, high five and celebrate birthdays, catch up for coffee and suddenly get a, bright idea. Or I think colleagues have been such important part of our lives, and we didn't probably realize when it was all okay, right? We didn't realize this will all go away. I would get up, get dressed, go to work, have like 8-10 hours of a lot of productive fun. And then I would come back and I never thought this would be it. stretched, stressed, and don't know where we are going from here. This uncertainty is really problematic for all of us, I think.
For sure. And I think, like you said, I mean, the things we've taken for granted till now, right? I mean, I can't even imagine what you've brought up, including for children. That's such a valid point. As a working parent, there's so many things and roles that people have to juggle. And absolutely, as colleagues, and where the office is going from here is still a big TBC. I do want to ask you, though, 2020 really was a year where we saw mental health become kind of a buzzword, really entering the mainstream in many ways. There are, good things and bad things about this. We'll come to both. But how do you feel it now reflects in the work environment when we talk about mental health?
Well, I want to say this out loud, that if organizations don't build in empathy as part of their strategy and not just culture, they are not going to attract good people. And they're going to be high attrition rates. And don't then expect a legacy organization. Of course, you can be an outfit, you can be an organization, but don't expect to be a legacy organization. You want to attract good talent and retain them, you have to build in empathy. In a lot of ways, our jobs shape our personal habits. I mean, that's obvious, right? Now, which can either help your performance or do you a great disservice. Now, this pandemic, I feel, for all of us, I mean, even for the most resilient of us, I mean, it's been a mirror. We have had to sit with ourselves. We have had to, dig deep. And if the workplace going forward does not make mental health their cornerstone, it's not going to work. I mean, for a starter, I would love organizations granting therapy leaves. What's wrong in building that in to say, hey, it's okay. You want a sick leave, you can take a sick leave, but there's also therapy leave and we encourage it. I want organizations to have medical coverage for mental challenges and mental illnesses. Even for privileged people like us, the truth is that therapy and, getting that sort of help costs money. And also organizations, as such, they have to move from this pure profit to profitable purpose. It's very important. Of course, there's going to be profit. We are not running an NGO. So, of course, the organizations will have to make money. But there has to be a bigger purpose behind that. And, these hierarchies that we see, managers after managers reporting into this lattice framework of, I don't know, and I'm part of it. So, they have to go. And we have to have more peer-to-peer, straight peer-to-peer support. And more importantly, that I see with creative people especially, you have to empower them and not control them. And I'm not trying to sound holier than thou here. I'm sure I too at various times have tried to control and try to make a campaign go the way I want to do. But I have realized that that doesn't do well for young people, and even, for anyone actually. So, building in purpose in your profit, recognizing that mental health is as important as physical health, breaking down hierarchies and making it a peer-to-peer support and empowering people. If the organizations do not do this, I don't think we'll see big legacy organizations flourishing, because mental health is becoming a huge challenge everywhere. And of course, a lot of people don't have access to good mental health support, or some people they probably don't have the awareness. But the truth is, in a lot of ways, it's affecting workforce. I see a lot of people wanting to do things but not able to.
Yeah.
So workplace has to take cognizance of it. You cannot be in denial anymore.
Sure. I think we are also seeing, and again, speaking from this place of privilege in urban India, we are seeing the younger colleagues, younger folks coming into the workforce. They do have the vocabulary increasingly. So it feels like something that's going to be a demand rather than a request, pretty soon. People are already talking about how they would evaluate organizations. So even as employers or prospective employers, it's something that's going to be weighing in,
Yes, absolutely. The young people are aware. Thankfully, there are some schools which are doing this kind of work where by the time they come to workforce, these are students who've gone through schools, who've talked to them about mental health. And then in colleges, they've probably been part of an NGO, or they have worked, or they're aware. Social media is a great tool.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of young people read what goes on Health Collective or some other places like other platforms like this. So the truth is, the young are very, very aware. And in my experience of hiring and grooming young people in very early 20s, right out of college, these people are far more focused, Amrita. They have a lot of clarity. And because new areas of work are opening up, for example, there are lots of young kids who are not afraid to be entrepreneurs very early in life. They want to work in very small, independent outfits, and you can't basically charm them in saying, "Hey, we are this haloed organization, and we've been operating for 25 long years." Those things don't charm them. They want to know exactly what they'll be doing in their job. I remember when I entered the workforce right after university, I didn't ask questions.
Yeah.
I was just, I think, happy to get a job. But the
Yeah.
truth is
Same.
that there is awareness, and I'm so glad there's awareness. I love it when people ask me, yeah, but exactly what are my KRAs? That is when they are joining. And I love that conversation because it opens doors for me to really figure out, yes, really what is his job. You can have an ambiguous designation for him. What is this 20-year-old or 21-year-old out of college exactly supposed to do? And I think we managers really need to get a stock on what are we doing with them. I mean, I think appraisal should actually be replaced by career furthering discussions,
Yeah.
rather than, okay, here's your whatever 3.54. I mean, that's just I think we do it out of habit or some kind of metrics. The truth is, we would want to, I think young people would want to see those conversations being replaced with career path discussions. Where am I going
We
from here?
do, I think, whether we like it or not, increasingly define ourselves through our work, right? I mean, how productive we are. Like you said, our appraisals become like that, focal point. And we had a leadership coach once, I think, one session I'd done a few years ago, where I was working at the time. And that person was like, listen, feedback, it's all feedback. These are all data points. People get too, invested in this is like the word of truth. It's not the word of God. It's actually just feedback, which you should take as such. But we don't talk about what that is doing to us, right? Taking it so seriously. We don't talk about burnout very often. I think we do have this culture of like performing under pressure. And you almost, you fake it till you make it. And then somebody burns out and you're like, oh, shoot, how come no one saw the signs? I do want to ask you a little bit about that. How do you feel about that? And if there's anything you want to share.
Yeah, well, I don't mind sharing here that for the first time I realized, or rather took cognizance of the fact of my deteriorating mental health, is when I think I hit burnout. I mean, last couple of years I've been touring for my job, and I must admit that it's been supremely rewarding, Amrita. Like, I've had some brilliant teams. I've worked with very young people. It's been very interesting and quite a steep learning curve. But I think I wasn't pausing, and I wasn't even thinking. I was like a hamster on a wheel, and I won't stop because it was rewarding. So I would put in more, and then it became rewarding, and it did great for my morale and whatever. But I think in a lot of ways, it was so nonstop. And actually, my father says this really nice thing. He keeps telling me, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Stop doing this. And he's been actually saying that, but I think I've not been listening to him. And then um, I realized that something was wrong when I would board a flight and I would get my seat and I would sit down and I would start crying. And I wasn't unhappy. I was like, let's say I was flying to Lucknow or Varanasi and Kolkata, and these are one of few of my favorite cities to go and visit, and the teams are great. And I would go there and I would looking forward to training them, to talking to them, but I would sit in the airport and I would start crying. And sometimes halfway through the training, I would be looking at them and they're looking at me, and I can't remember what I have to say. And I would go blank and I would slur. It was also very strange because I would give a brilliant presentation and I would do a very energetic workshop. And then I would go to the washroom and manage my panic attack. And then I realized, okay, something is going on and you cannot be in denial. And thankfully, of course, I paused and because of privilege again and being surrounded by friends and family who get you, I got help. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't know about fake it till you make it, but even if you make it, sometimes we don't know where to stop because we are so conditioned to achieve And literally sitting with yourself and doing nothing is something we don't know. We don't know. I mean, even now, I don't know. Sometimes I get so fidgety because I have to do something new. I have to build something. I have to write something. There's this, unfortunately, I think we have a long way to go till we really figure out how to sit with ourselves. And of
Yeah.
course, I think we all grew up in families that put a very high net worth to achievements, and it was somehow connected to our self-worth. And and it's nobody's fault. It's just how it is. It's how the last 4 generations probably have lived.
Yeah.
So it is true that there is huge burnout, and this is just my story. I know of a lot of people around me, my own colleagues, my teammates. Just day before yesterday, I was talking to two of my um, colleagues, and they were like, "Look, I can't take it. I can't write another email." And at this point of time, of course, I'm not in a place of advice, but all I can do is I listen, and then I say, "Hey, you know what? So this is my first advice." I say, just put down the phone and just see if you can apply for some leave. And of course, it's a very rudimentary thing, but that's the best you can do, to take a couple of days off to sit and reassess what's going on.
No, I think that's really good advice. I think, like you said, most of us, we get into that hamster on wheel kind of mode and don't stop to think. Unfortunately, until something happens, and then there's this jarring realization that it's not sustainable. So I do feel that we both have about 20 years of work experience. If I could
Yeah.
go back and tell our younger selves, or even tell colleagues along the way, that it's really great to achieve, and I'm really all for. I think we're
Yeah.
ambitious, we want to achieve, but nothing should trump your own health and wellness. That's what you realize, I think, along the way.
I think, Amrita, nobody spoke to us about all this. We didn't know. Our parents didn't know. I mean, I can tell you, my mother, who is a senior citizen, works harder than me. And I mean, she's doing brilliant work, but the truth is, she doesn't know how to stop. And honestly, I mean, a lot of our friends and families, they do great work, but it is just how it is. I mean,
Yeah.
I have had the opportunity to work in UAE and the UK, and I used to love it when people in the UK used to stop work at 5, pack up, and leave. And I was a university student, and I was interning with BBC, and I have seen reporters finish their shift at whatever, let's say it's 8 o'clock, it's a night shift. 8 o'clock in the morning, they're finished and they have left. They don't hang around. They go have a life which is separate from work. I think the problem with us is that we have such a unidirectional or unidimensional
Yeah.
living strategy. Like, I miss my colleagues. Shouldn't I be missing my um, dancer friends or my hiking friends or my coffee buddies? I miss my colleagues. I mean, while it's good, but it's
Yeah.
also reflective of how we live, right?
Unidimensional, that's absolutely true. I did this year, actually, in 2020. At one point, 3 to 4 months in, I was like, what the, like, why did I take this as a year of self-improvement? Like, I have to do courses, I have to finish my book, I have to, it's like, you can breathe. I
Yeah.
asked a friend, I was like, can you give me a diagnosis for this? And she was like, no, you need to spend some time with yourself and just figure out, because I think the pace you can only you can set your pace, and I'm hoping that that's what anyone watching or listening can take away from this conversation. Anindita, you did reference your interest in mental health, your journey starting somewhere around this realization. Can you
Yeah.
take us through a little bit more of what's driving that interest? How are you placed on that journey, as we talk further about this?
I'm doing courses. I made a commitment to sort of get back to studying this year. So I've enrolled into courses. I've done some courses. What I know is that I, of course, want to be a very vocal advocate of mental health, and I want to do a lot of community work. What I don't know is how to go about it. Of course, during COVID, there's I mean, the situation is not apt to probably start a lot of things. So I don't have a plan, but any platform I get to speak, anywhere I get somebody reaches out, I think one of the ways that one can be is to start with support. So if a family member or a friend or anybody reaches out, and these are things I've learned in my coursework, is to actively listen. So that 30 minutes the person wants to talk to you, you let them talk without judgment. And I can tell you, I was a what do you call that, over talker, interrupter. I have actually worked on myself to stop myself from doing that. And I also had a very bad habit of giving unsolicited advice. I have really stopped those. And that is my self work, because I've realized that I am in no position to give them that sort of advice. I'm not trained. And one thing I do is I'm a big champion of therapy. So anywhere I go, anybody who asks me, when I see that they are in a point of distress, I I try and sort of lead them towards therapy, or I tell them to go seek professional help, whatever they want. I mean, it's up to them. But I have realized that even in the community, if you can support 10 people who will then support 10 people and then they will support 10 people, we've made some progress. And of course, this is again in the privileged circle, who can afford therapy,
Yeah.
who can afford. I'm not even going to the community, which probably needs a bigger discussion and a different discussion.
Is there a myth or something you want bust? You think that we should be done with, in India of 2021? One major myth that you wish people would just get over?
Yeah, I think I'll sum it up in one question. You have everything going for you. Why are you depressed? I think assuming that just because on the outside, everything, this whole sketch of somebody's life looks so perfect, uh, assuming and then in a way invalidating it, and also asking the question where you start to doubt that are you really imagining all this. So invalidating people's emotional situations is something people will have to stop. And also this toxic positivity, I people have to stop saying, okay, so I've stopped talking to people who say things like, don't worry yaar, sab theek ho jayega. Because I know that for things to get okay, you have to work on yourself and work and put in some work. Okay, at least in my life, nothing has just got okay, yaar. It has never happened. So I mean, if it's happening in other people's life, great. So this whole thing about it's all right, don't worry about it, yaar. Just go for a holiday, go shop, that kind of, and don't worry, everything will happen in its own time. Yeah, but right now is the time I'm suffering. So I'm sure the future looks great. But yeah, in a way, invalidating and also
Yeah.
toxic positivity and yay, go get it. Life is beautiful. Those have to stop. Can we please pause and just look at the person and not just the entire Instagram life they have? We have to stop.
Yeah, no, that's a good reality check for us to for us to end this chat on. I'm hoping that those of you who've been watching have found something helpful as we've been trying to talk about mental health with Anindita. This is part of the Health Collective Talk series.